This is November the 22nd, 2004, and we're interviewing today Mr. Merriell Autrey from Griffin, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia. He was born in 1925 in Griffin, Georgia, reared there, entered the service around 1944, and fought across Europe, and has been a banker in the Atlanta area since that time. He's been married for 57 years with 3 children and 5 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. We're delighted to have him with us today. Merrill, we'd like you to talk about where you grew up, what it was like during the Depression time, where you were on Pearl Harbor Day, and just kind of ad-lib a little if you don't mind.
All righty. I grew up in Griffin, Georgia, and it was in the early days of the Depression. Well, the Depression really had not hit until the late 20s, but I can remember that in about 1930, my daddy took the family and we went to High Point, North Carolina, and I started school there. And it's ironic that on one of my days going to school, I passed one of the companies there that was having a strike, and I didn't know what a strike was. I was in the first grade. But I do remember that there was a .30 caliber heavy machine gun, 2 of them sitting there in the front door of this company. And that in itself is something, because that .30 caliber machine gun came back to me in World War II. But we left there and moved back to Griffin, and of course through the 30s it was tough. We didn't know how tough it was because it was tough on everybody. I remember my mother worked, my daddy didn't have a job. I remember he raised rabbits. He had 5 or 6 pens of rabbits. He sold rabbits, and we ate a lot of rabbit. But I guess the thing that helped more than anything was Roosevelt's WPA, which began to put a little money in the pockets of people. And we had people with doctorate degrees and college degrees that were working in the WPA, restoring the infrastructure of our country. I went to Griffin High School, and again, we all enjoyed it because no one had anything. We didn't know when we were poor. We enjoyed the company of each other and the friendship. And in 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, I was a 16-year-old kid, shortly to be 17. But war was not in my vocabulary then. The thing that I was interested in was football, girls, and big band music. And I don't know in which order, because they all had meaning. And I never dreamed that the war would affect me. Well, the next year in school, they put 12 grades in, and I was able to go back for the 11th and 12th grade. And they began to come around giving tests for V12, the Army AST program, and so forth and so on, the Air Force. And I took the test, but somehow I never did want to do that. I said, I'm going to wait. I've had so many friends, and I had lost some friends, boys I'd played ball with already, that had left after the 11th grade and had joined up in Marines or Army. I know one was in the Tank Corps and one was in the Marines, and both had been killed, one in Europe, one in the Pacific. So I said, you know, they were drafted, so I'm going to be drafted too. And so I waited, and in December the 29th, 1943, I turned 18. And I went to the register, and I did, and they called me in March to come to Fort McPherson for pre-induction. And I went there, and while there, they told me that I only had 2 months to graduate from high school if I could get 3 letters from somebody saying I was a good boy, that they'd let me graduate. So I sent the 3 letters in, and they answered by sending me my orders. So I graduated from high school on Monday night, May the 29th, and went in the Army at Fort Mac on June the 5th, 1944. Waked up the next morning, and the biggest news was the invasion of Europe. I still thought, well, I've got to go through basic training, so I'm not really concerned. And wasn't that I wasn't worried, just that I wasn't concerned. And went to Landing, Florida, and took 17 weeks basic training. Got out of that in October, and they told us that they couldn't send 18-year-olds overseas. So they sent us to Chaffee, Arkansas for a week. And we picked up 500 Mexicans there and went on to Shanks, New York, and stayed 2 days, got processed through overseas equipment, and went to Shanks, New York. Went to Fort George E. Meade, Maryland, picked up our equipment, and then went to Shanks, New York. And on about December the 10th, we sailed out of Shanks, New York. And we were supposed to be headed for China-Burma-India. We picked up a convoy coming out of North Carolina, and on the 16th, we were about 3/4 of the way across the Atlantic, going through the Mediterranean, and the Bulge struck. So they just shipped us into Marseilles, France, and put us on airplanes and flew us to the front. We flew to Verdun. We processed out of Verdun on the Red Ball Express, and I joined my company as an 18-year-old. And the next day, we moved up to the Bulge in that great turn that Patton pulled with the 5th and the 4th Armored Division. And 3 days later, we were in combat in the Battle of the Bulge, and I celebrated my 19th birthday. And from there, we went on riding the spearhead with Patton, basically wherever he went. And we crossed the Rhine and down below Frankfurt, and about 990 feet, I believe, where they strung Patton Bridge. And you may have seen the life picture of Patton urinating in the Rhine River off of that bridge. It was in Life magazine. And we went on after taking Frankfurt, then they shot us up to the Ruhr Pocket, and we took 120,000 prisoners out of the Ruhr Pocket. Took them back to the PW camp at Frankfurt, and then jumped off into down through Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Germany. My division was split. We had 3 regiments, and 3 regiments was in 3 countries at one time. And we fought through there and cleaned out Saar Pocket and down through Saarlotten, Regensburg, Reagan, and into Austria, Winterberg, and Czechoslovakia, and stayed there until the war ended. And we moved back. We stayed in occupation for about a month. We guarded 300 German SS troops who were fanatics, and about 1,000 of the regular People's Army. And then we left out of there and went back to Reims, France, and they gave us an opportunity of getting out and staying there, or coming back, and they told us then that we were scheduled to invade Japan. Well, my division, the 5th Infantry Division, was the first organized outfit overseas in World War II. The 1st Cav, which was formed in the Philippines, had never been on American soil. It was the only American division that was overseas in World War II. And my division went to Iceland and did dock work up there until they took Patton in as a decoy on the invasion of Europe. And then when they formed his 3rd Army and sent him into over to the continent, the 5th Infantry was one of the infantry divisions that joined him along with the 4th Army. And the 5th fought broke through at Avalanches and went on around all the way up with him until the war was over. A great general, in my opinion. I said earlier that that machine gun would come back. It did. When I joined my outfit, I joined H Company of the 10th Regiment of the 5th Infantry Division, and that was a heavy weapons company. And the first attack, I became the #1 machine gunner. And my uncle had been in World War II, and he had been a machine gunner. So I felt like I was bringing back something from the Autrey household. But we fought all the way through with the 3rd, and I'm happy to say that I had some time with them. I came back, and they didn't know if they were going to give us a day or a week or a month, but they gave us a month furlough. And I went home, and on about this was in July, July the 20th, roughly, and about August the 6th or the 8th, whenever it was, that the war in Japan ended with the dropping of the A-bomb, the 2 A-bombs. We went back to Campbell, Kentucky, and assured that we would not be on the invasion, but told that we would go as occupation force. And we hung around there and hung around there. And finally, in April of '46, we went to Chicago, made the Army Day Parade in front of Truman and Eisenhower down Michigan Boulevard. And it was kind of tough then because the old guys had gotten out, and they were not promoting too much. I was a staff sergeant, and the only line non-com, first 3 grader in the company. I did all of the reveille and retreat. I took the company to the field. I led it down Michigan Boulevard. We had 1 first lieutenant in the company, and it was short-handed all the way around. So I was happy to get out then, and I got out, went to the University of Georgia. When I went through discharge, they asked me if I wanted, a friend of mine had told me, said, you know, since you froze your feet, they're going to ask you if you want to apply for a pension. You tell them yes. And I said, why? And they said, you'll get a pension, you can go to school under PL-16. So I did, and sure enough, I had frozen my feet, and I went from a size 11 boot to a size 14 boot when I went back to the front. And my feet were still giving me problems. And I got a pension, 10%, gave me $13.80 a month. I was wealthy. And the guy asked me if I wanted to stay in the reserve. I said, I don't think so. He said, well, Sergeant, he said, you ought to. He said, everything's peaceful now and you don't have to worry about anything. And he said, and I said, well, I put in for a pension. He said, that doesn't matter. Not going to hurt you a bit. So I stayed in the reserve, stupid me. I got married in '47, and in 1949, in April of 1949, they sent me a re-up card for the reserves. And it said in there, do not sign this card if you're drawing a pension. Well, I went up to the reserve office, and I told them I was drawing a pension. They said, oh, that doesn't matter. Just race it out and say, I am, and sign your name, it'll be all right. Said, you'll be honorary reserve. And in 1950, I was honored. I was called back to the Korean deal. And they kept sending me the pension, and when I got out a year later, they wrote me a letter and said I owed them $13.80 times 12. So I wrote them back and I said, just don't send me any more pensions till it's paid up. And they've never sent me another one. But then I got called back in the Korean deal and spent a year and a day. I did not go overseas because when I went through medics, the colonel that had looked at my feet said if I went to Korea that I'd lose them, and he couldn't send me to Europe, and he didn't want me to go in the north part of the United States. So I stayed a year and a day down at Fort Benning and got out, and they sent me a little card and wanted to know what I felt like my MOS should be, and knowing that I was free, I wrote them back and said, I'd like to have an MOS of a nightclub singer in a port of embarkation, or I'd like to be assigned to an underground mess kit repair battalion. And I've never heard another word from the Army.
Merrill, you were 19 years old, you'd gotten to the Battle of the Bulge a couple of days before your 19th birthday.
Right.
How cold was it? What were the conditions like on the front lines when you got in there?
Well, most of the time I was over there, it was cold as a mother-in-law's love. You had snow every bit of anywhere from 2 to 3 feet. Some drifts up to 6 and 8 feet. It was a while before we got snowpacks. It was a long time before we got snowsuits. I remember we went in one house and stole sheets and wrapped them around us. The weather was so bad and so cold that I have actually had my water-cooled gun to freeze on its mount. Take it into the house or wherever you could and throw it out. And within 15, 20 minutes after you put it back on the cradle, it was frozen again. I never knew what the temperature was except that it was cold. And I've had all the snow I want.
How long did you go without taking a bath?
I went for 32 days from the time we hit the Bulge in late December until late January without taking a bath, brushing my teeth, washing my face, combing my hair. And I remember when we got back to Luxembourg City for a break, they set up field showers. And I went down to take a shower, and taking my GI underwear off, which were the long handle, they were absolutely stuck to my skin. It was a sorry sight. 32 days without brushing your teeth is enough.
Did you, how long did it take you to get frostbite? A couple of days, or did it take weeks? Or?
It took about a week. We were going we were crossing a little river, and I say a river, I call it a creek. But there were a bunch of stones in it, and we were jumping from one stone to the other. And the guy in front of me lived over here in Wanda. Jumped on one stone, and the guy in front of him didn't move, so I moved too fast, and I'd hit him, and I hit me, and we both fell in the creek. And we went on up on top of the hill and set up a defensive positions. And that night, his feet swelled so bad that he took his shoes off and couldn't get them back on. So he came back, we evacuated him the next day, and I went for about 5 more days, and we pulled off of that position and went into another position up on the Iowa River. And I remember coming in off of guard duty. We were on 2 and off 4. And I remember coming off of guard duty and going in and laying down trying to go to sleep. And when I waked up, I couldn't get up. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. So my squad leader helped me up, and I had not taken off my boots, so I didn't know. And they sent me back, and I went back to a battalion aid center, and they looked at me and sent me on back. And I ended up back in the 225th General Hospital. And my feet were black as that microphone cover there, and peeled off from my ankles all the way down, and swelled up to wearing a size 14 boot.
During that time, were you seeing combat, or was it mostly patrolling?
No, this was combat.
So you were shooting a machine gun?
Yeah, we were in direct attack from about the 27th, 28th of December. My birthday, we're taking point blank firing right into our foxholes, my position, out for tanks. We're sitting about 300 yards down off of the river. We were in combat all through there. And
Did you see the enemy you were shooting at, or were you just shooting in the direction where they were?
most of the time, you was trying to shoot to where you thought they were. Now, sometimes they give their position away. They had a lot of German Shepherd dogs, and they'd turn loose, and you'd see where the dogs came from, and they'd come up to our position. Of course, we were ordered to shoot any dog in no man's land, and we killed a lot of good German dogs. But I remember one time we looked up and coming down. We didn't know they were in a house, but coming down the hill was a guy on a motorcycle. And he goes wheeling into this house, gets out and goes inside. So we opened up on it and knocked his motorcycle out. And last time we saw him, he was running back up over the hill. But I remember one time on the Iowa River, that was where we first hit the Siegfried line. They were coming out of these pillboxes going into this house to eat chow. So we had some 4.2 mortar platoon up with us, and this lieutenant said, let's have some fun. And so they went in there for lunch, and he didn't pull the pin on the mortar, but he gave him the range, and he was lucky. And you could see the mortar going down the chimney. And they were coming out of the upstairs of the house, out the windows and everywhere. So, you know, you have fun sometimes. You get to laugh sometimes. None of it's fun, but you get to laugh sometimes. But no, it was combat. It wasn't just patrols.
You went into, as you indicated, you went into active duty fairly rapidly. There wasn't a breaking in phase for you. You were thrust to the front lines almost as soon as you hit Europe. Were you scared? Were your friends scared?
Yeah, well, you know, when I went in service, I always had a fear of shooting somebody. I never knew whether I could do that or not. And my first attack, I got pinned down by a sniper for 2 hours on snow. And I couldn't move. They kept hollering for me to bring the gun up, and I couldn't move. He put 2 bullets right by my head. And finally a rifleman over on my right heard me and saw what I was in, and he could see the guy in the tree, and I couldn't, but I knew where he was. And so he raised up and got him, and I was able to get up. But from then on, I didn't have any fear of shooting. I lost a lot of good friends over there. I get mad sometimes when I look on television and see these guys running around on those streets over there with AK-47s or whatever they got, and a bandana over their head or something, and they've got to be terrorists, and we let them run around in the streets. We would have shot those guys. And how they can even consider questioning that Marine recently that shot that guy is beyond me. I had a dear friend that I went through basic with, a hell of a nice guy. And we went up over the hill one day, and just as we got over the hill, there was an 88 gun down there, which they used for everything. And there were 3 Germans around it. And a couple of guys started firing at them, and this lieutenant said, hold your fire, they're going to give up. They gave up, but not before they pulled the pin. And that 88 hit my buddy right in the gut. And the only thing was left of him was 2 buckets of ammo. And I don't understand things like that. I don't understand why this country today cannot realize that they are where they are today because somebody gave something for them in World War I, and World War II, in Korea, even in Desert Storm, for people to live like we're living today in this country. This didn't just come about. These people that put signs up and bumper stickers up and it says war is not the answer. Tell me what the answer is. We had 9 years of negotiations with those people. Sometimes you have to be willing to stand up and say, I'll die protecting what I love. And if if you love this country, you'll be willing to die for it. And if I could, I'd go back today. I'll be 79 years old next month. I've got back problems, and I've got a bunch of other problems, heart problems, and so forth. But if I knew there's one thing that I could do over there, and they would take me, though my wife is an invalid, I would go back over there to show that I'll fight for what I believe in. And I won't pussyfoot about it.
What would you say to future generations about what's going on today? You've said
I
part
guess-
of it.
I guess the thing that bothers me the most, and I have 5 beautiful grandchildren ranging from age 7 to 25, and I've got one great grandbaby. And I would say to kids today that learn all you can about the history of this country, because it's real. And it's been the price of what you are enjoying today has been paid for by somebody else. And if you can't do anything in your life, please leave this country better than you found it. Put something back for those coming after you, so that they too might have a little something. I'm concerned that we're not teaching history. We're not teaching geography. It's amazing when you ask a teenager today the capital of one of our states. And first of all, you'd be lucky if they know what the capital is. Our kids are not being educated. That's the thing that bothers me the most. And those that are being and getting good education recognize that somebody stood up for them somewhere in the past.
Merrill, you took your children back to Europe some years ago to see some of the places you had been. What was that like, reminiscing with them and revisiting some of the places? And you took them to Munich to see all the camps.
We went back over, and after visiting England, we went down and pretty much joined down into France and came back up through Luxembourg, through the areas that I fought through, and went to Bastogne, and went through the museum at the Battle of the Bulge. And it gave them an understanding that, you know, what we had then was nothing like what we have today to compete with, to fight with, to fire with, to die with, to kill with. So they were able to see that. And then we went from there down to Munich. I wanted them to see Dachau. Dachau was the oldest concentration camp that the Germans had. By 1937, Hitler had killed 15,000 of Germans who were opposed to him and had burned them to death in Dachau. 15,000 of his own people. And I took my kids through there, and they saw the ovens, and they read all about it. They saw the barracks where they slept 3 and 4 deep and 3 or 4 high. They saw what they got to eat in pictures. And I told them that, you know, just because you're looking at this doesn't mean it's over. We've got Hitlers in the world today. We've got, we had Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. We had that idiot in North Korea. We had Osama bin Laden. We got Saddam Hussein. We got the Khomeini in Iran. The world is not free by any stretch of the imagination of what we saw in the 30s. The bad thing is that people today don't know about it. They don't know anything of the past to relate it to what we see today. And that's scary to me. We've still got Nazis in this country. They've got them all over Germany. Skinheads, they call them. Our nation has really taken this thing called free and pretty much just said free is free. You look at the illegal import in this country today, not just from Mexico, from everywhere. We don't check too much today. We say, come on in and join us and be one of us. And they tell me that the biggest influx that we're going to get from terrorists going forward is going to come out of Mexico. That Mexico is letting terrorists, all kinds of terrorists, into their country. And they know how to cross the border. They've already found prayer shawls and prayer rugs on the border down there where they've come across. I'm not an alarmist. And I'm not afraid to fight for what I believe in. But I do think that we could be more, what's the word I'm looking for? We could be more selective. We certainly should
Diligent.
be more diligent than what we are today in this country. And that's not only on the Mexican border, that's on the Canadian border.
How do you feel about the opportunity you had to get an education after the war was over here in the United States?
It meant a lot to me. I did have several football scholarship offers, but you know, when you go away for 2 years and when you went right out of school as an 18-year-old and you were put in basic training, and the first thing they started teaching was how to kill people. That's a hell of an impact on your life as an 18-year-old. And then they tell you got to kill them before they kill you. And then you come back and you say, well, do I want to spend the rest of my life, or the next 4 years anyway, enjoying football and getting by? Or do I want to pick up my life and pay for those 2 years by getting down and start studying and getting on? And I decided that, Clemson decided for me. I went up there and he told me I was burnt out as far as he was concerned. He had right guards standing 6 deep. And I said, thank you. So I went on to Georgia and got my degree and got married while I was up there. Enjoyed life.
And your wife, you've been married 57 years?
57 years.
And she had a stroke
18 years ago.
18 years ago, and she's been paralyzed since then?
On her left side, yes.
And you've taken care of her?
Tried to. I don't know if I do a good job of it, but I tried to. Now, we have a lot of fun. She taught me how to do her hair, how to tease her hair, how to hold her hand while she cuts her fingernails. And nobody else can do it but her. So we have a lot of fun together. She can get around, and we go down to the beach as often as we can, and we enjoy that.
Merrill, when I met your friend Ike Strenzi, he was being very attentive to his wife in the hospital when she had her knee replaced. It was one of the things that made such a striking impression on me is how attentive he was to his wife, and it seems like you've been the same way to your wife, and somehow or another, loyalty to your spouse seems to be one of the tenets that came out of your generation from the Depression, and being thankful for what you had after what you went through in World War II, and you fought in World War II in part to take care of the buddies on each side of you, and you do that in your marriage also.
Well, you know, when I came along, when you came along for that matter, a man's word was his honor. A handshake was good as a contract. My daddy taught me And my daddy didn't leave me too much, but he left me one thing, and that was try to have a little bit better life than he had, and try to leave a little bit more to my children than he left to me. I'll never forget when I told him I was getting married. He said, the only thing he said was, don't ever let me hear about you being mean to her. And that was, that's something that stuck with me all my life. And I remember our vows very well, through sickness and through health. And, you know, I've just felt that that was my obligation. That was my duty. That was my responsibility. Because I know she would have done the same for me.
When you went back to Germany with your family, did you feel any animosity toward the people you'd fought against, or did you?
I felt more love for the Germans than I did for the French, and still do today. And still do today. Now, I'm a little bit concerned with what Chirac has tried to do. I think France and Germany have been a little bit two-faced in their relationship with both Iran and with Iraq, and probably with Syria. And I think it's greed, I think it's jealousy. Chirac wants to be the #1 country in the European organization. And he'll never get there if you go back and look at history. France has never been able to fight itself out of a paper bag. If it hadn't have been for the French Foreign Legion in Africa, the French would have been wiped out. So, no, I have a lot more respect for the Germans than I do for the French. And another reason is that the Germans are dedicated, responsible people. They work hard. They are very, very smart with what they try to do and what they try to build. Look at what they built in the 30s. Had the first rockets, first jet propulsion. They had some of the greatest weapons ever used. The French were over there, built the Maginot Line and faced it one way. Never realized somebody could bypass it and come back and attack it, and they couldn't fire on it. That's stupid. Don't get me started.
You saw the, I'm loving every minute of this. You saw peace brought to the world in your era at the end of World War II by the dropping of 2 nuclear weapons in Japan, and it kept you from having to invade the mainland of Japan. What are your feelings about the use of nuclear weapons today and how we can control it?
I think I told you earlier that we were told coming back from overseas that we were allowed to get out of our division and stay over there. Didn't know when they'd bring us home, or we could come back with the promise that we would be on this salt wave into Japan. Well, you know, everybody said we've been through this, we might as well go through that. And we came back. I don't think there was a soul got out of my outfit. I saw a sergeant who got Silver Star, and he refused it, and they wouldn't let him. He said, I don't want it. And they made him take it. It gave him 85 points, which meant he had to leave the division. He couldn't come back with us if you had 85 points. He cried like a baby. We came home, and I didn't say anything to my family. I just told them we're home on furlough. But I think all of us sweated out the fact that we were going to be on this salt wave. We had seen projections that 100,000 troops would be killed on the beaches of Japan. There are a lot of people that think Mr. Truman made a mistake because we killed quite a few people in those 2 towns, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But I say this, I'm thankful for Mr. Truman because he saved a lot of American lives and a lot of Japanese lives, because we wouldn't have been firing dummy rounds if we'd hit those beaches. So ending that war saved a lot of lives. It killed a lot of lives, but it saved a lot of lives. So I thank Mr. Truman, and I was happy to parade before him on the Army Day Parade in Chicago in 1946.
I think the numbers are that we lost more people in the Battle of the Bulge than we lost in the Pacific Theater during the 4 years we were over there doing the island hopping that we did.
I did know, in fact, as I saw the other day, how many people we had lost in the Bulge, but I can't recall the figure. I don't know how many we lost in the Pacific. But China was a rough theater, real rough.
What was it like when you came back and went to college? Did you feel there was a discrepancy between you all who had been overseas fighting and the younger people who were your classmates in college that had not been overseas? What kind of adjustment did you have to make?
Well, I think what you saw was the veteran came back, and he was much more interested in getting his education than a lot of the young boys that came up and young girls that came up to go to college in their freshman year and all. I think that you didn't see as much hoopla, the wearing of the rat cap and the wearing of the red and black and the wearing of the sweaters that had a G on them or whatever, as you did would have otherwise. People had a little bit more reserve about them, I guess you would say. Well, they still went to the ball games and they cheered for the team, and, but it wasn't all the hoopla that I didn't see it in my group. I know that they tried to force the freshman veterans to wear the rat cap. The freshman veterans told them to go to hell. They wanted a rat cap unless they wanted to. So they didn't. A lot of them did.
Did Georgia beat Georgia Tech the first year you came back?
46?
Yes.
Yes. That was when Trippy was playing, and that was when Hardeman was playing, I believe, at Duke. Paul Duke was playing.
George Matthews?
I think George, he may have been playing. And I believe Broyles was quarterback.
I can't remember.
I think he was. That was his last year, I believe.
Are there any other thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to leave us?
Well, I would say this. I would like to see you, I'd like to see more people in this community partake of what you have here. You know, I sat on the board of visitors at Emory University, and I learned that Emory had something called Yerkes Primate Center. And I was fortunate enough, as a member of that board, to having gone through that each year. And people in DeKalb County, much less the state of Georgia, don't even know what Yerkes Primate Center is all about. But that's the most fascinating thing you've ever seen, what they're doing out there. They're teaching chimpanzees to play the piano, to ask for an orange, and if you give them an apple, they'll throw it back to you. They want an orange. I told Dr. Laney then that I felt like the biggest problem is that people don't realize what they got in Georgia. I would venture to say that 50% of the people in Atlanta don't know that this museum is here.
Probably wrong.
And I would be willing to say that 80% of Georgia doesn't know it's here. And how many times do you get school buses bringing school children here?
That's all right. We can keep talking.
Not many, I would bet. Do you get many school buses?
I don't know what the visitation schedule is. They do have trips and field trips for students to come here, but I can't tell you the frequency.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You know, a lot of people don't even know we got an IMAX in this town. I remember I traveled for 5 years out of Chicago for the bank, and I remember so many times corporate treasurers would ask me, what kind of education do we have here? A lot of people don't know that we've got about 5 or 6 universities here. Georgia has failed to sell what it's got, and it's got a lot to sell.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of my generation to your generation for your making it possible for me to go to nursery school, kindergarten, while you were in the Battle of the Bulge. I was having a good time taking advantage of the sacrifices you were making overseas.
Well, you were doing what I was doing. You were girls, football, and just couldn't get them in the right order.
Couldn't get them in the right order. But your generation left us a great heritage and will be forever in your debt. And the people who are going to be looking at this tape 50 years from now will look back and be proud that you were one of their forebearers, just like you look back to the people who were in World War I and the war between the states of War of 1812 and the Revolution, and you're appreciative of what they did for you. We in future generations will be appreciative of what you've done for us.
Well, I thank you, and you know, I think if you would ask any veteran, he would tell you that he's not unappreciative of your thanks, but he's not necessarily begging for thanks. He's saying he did a job because he felt like it was his responsibility. If he believed in this country, he should be willing to put his life on the line. And I believe that.